So Chris Gore published an open letter from an anonymous member of the Writers Guild. He stayed anonymous because he was worried about getting blacklisted for what he was about to say. Here's the title: A Veteran Screenwriter's Plot Twist on Hollywood's DEI Cultural Shift. And this is an open letter from a white writer to the film and TV business. And he's calling for a change back to what this business used to be before DEI took over. He's saying that this regime essentially blocks you from getting jobs if you are white, straight, or male. Here are some quotes, though. For the last 20 years, I've been working as a professional screenwriter. In 2019, things started to change, and quickly. Suddenly, subtext and themes became the main point of discussing a project or IP. The first question in every meeting became, what can we say with this project? What can we teach people with this story? Plot, character, and audience were now secondary and sometimes not even discussed, which is already evident to us in the material as we watch it.
Everyone knew that, but hearing it actually kind of confirmed by someone from behind the scenes, it's kind of a
we feel
kind of
seen, heard, validated, etc.
It's really funny. Okay, this is one of those things where because most of the television that I watch is old, every time I'm watching it, I'm like, I can't point you to specific proof, but the proof is in the material, right? And you watch these old shows, and I always point out, I say, there is a sense of hope and a sense of there's just an ability for the show to rejoice the human spirit. I can't even put it into words in a lot of these shows. There's just a sense of hopefulness towards the future that you do not see in most modern entertainment today. Not any of it with a sense, most of it has a sense of cynicism that you just can't point specifically to, but it's there.
Yeah, I don't know where this was from, but I saw a scene from something Donald Glover was in, reposted on X the other day, where it's...
Atlanta?
Wait, what?
From the show Atlanta?
I'm not sure, but he was like at some hotel and he tried to pay in cash for these VIP tickets or something. They turned him away, and then they accepted cash payment from the next customer, who was a white man. When he went up to that white guy and tried to say something, the guy flashed a gun at him that was on his hip. And they were like presenting this as something that really happens in the real world. Like, we're still living in the Jim Crow era. And it's that nihilistic messaging that you're referring to.
The writers who wrote 20 years ago would have written about racial issues in a different way because it was not treated with the severity that it's treated with now. It would have been, I always point out to the example that in the show Justified, they mentioned that the character of Boyd Crowder was basically, he got involved with white supremacists, not because he was a white supremacist, but because he loved to blow things up. And he was just a bad guy, right? They actually have the character point out, they say he got involved with the militia movement and the white supremacist bullshit because they're pointing out, these are not people to be taken seriously. These are bad people. And first of all, we all know now that the number of people that actually are part of those groups is so negligible now that it's not even something to be acknowledged. And it would have been shown that way. So you still address it, you still bring it up, but it's not given the focus that it's given today because it's divisive and because everyone can tell that they're being pandered to.
Right. Here are some more quotes. He said, at one point, my agent told me they couldn't put me up for any writing assignments or TV staffing jobs because the executives only wanted to hear takes on the material from BIPOC, female, or LGBTQ writers. Some shows started instituting quotas that 40 to 50% of the writing staff had to be people of color, which is obviously an overrepresentation. Is this illegal? Probably, but hey, I'm not an attorney, and there's no way to find out anyway, because if you ask any questions about this, you'll be labeled a racist or called out for your white male privilege.
The cultural consequences would outweigh the benefit of actually suing.
If you so much as raise an eyebrow, there's a risk you'll never work again. Why this is anonymous. So do you respect that he kept this anonymous?
Look, it's the same.
Because I don't.
It's the same thing that we had, like when we had Arden on Friday. Like, it's hard for people to buy. You're not going to get the same traction when you don't name names.
Well, that's a whole different.
Yes,
I mean, when you're making
I
like
understand. No, I understand.
I'm not saying either way that I think she should or shouldn't name people, but that's like a Me Too claim is a whole different ballgame. But this guy is talking about industry politics.
Yes.
And he's been in this business for decades. He's calling out a change that happened that needs to be reversed. And he's not willing to put his name on the letter.
It won't. So basically, the idea here is he will continue to work for the scraps that he's given, because despite he talks about he has decades of experience. Despite being qualified, he is going to get scraps now because he's not going to be allowed to work to the level in which his talent allows. He's accepting that those scraps are worth not making waves, because what will happen if he makes waves is he won't get any work at all. Or what will happen is he will be ghettoized and be forced to work on Daily Wire movies when maybe he doesn't want to work on Daily Wire movies.
I doubt that this guy is even vaguely right-wing.
But that's my point. Like,
He's
come out
very
at
liberal.
all, to come out at all will immediately label you as right-wing.
I understand the consequences, the unofficial or official blacklisting that happens. I do. But at the same time, it's sort of like when Me Too accusers themselves remain anonymous, or they accuse anonymous people who they're not willing to name. It takes away from the gravity of what you're saying.
Exactly.
He said this doesn't impact the top 2% of writers, showrunners, and directors, since they're in rarefied air where they get work no matter what. It's those of us with decades of experience working on some of your favorite TV shows and films that are now sitting on the sidelines waiting. He also pointed out that the Writers Guild holds a Latinx Writers Committee meeting, an LGBTQ plus Writers Committee meeting, Committee of Black Writers, a Middle Eastern Writers meeting, a Women's Writers Committee meeting, and an Asian American Writers Committee meeting, to name just a few. Can you imagine if there was a white writers committee meeting? We might be murdered.
Yeah.
And he also pointed out that if there were such a thing, all of the people in that room would be the liberals who allowed this to happen.
Yep.
It's not like they want a change. When creating a writer's profile on the WGA website, there is one box to check if you're heterosexual, 3 choices under transgender, and 6 under LGBTQ. Not sure what those statistics have to do with writing a great episode of The Witcher.
It's crazy because back in the day, like now imagine like filling out a resume and these things matter more than your actual credentials.
Yeah, I actually did pull up the Writers Guild of America application form for membership, and it does ask you all of these different questions about your identity groups. And here's what it says. Help us help you. As part of the Inclusion and Equity Department's initiative to increase hiring opportunities for various groups of writers, the Guild periodically publishes specialized membership directories to provide lists of groups of writers to network studios and producers who have a particular interest in hiring writers in these groups. So you can indicate that you are okay with publishing what ethnicity you are, what languages you speak, your age group, your gender identity.
It also incentivizes it
sexual
in a way
identity
where,
and disability.
Back in the day, it would have been a point of pride for any gifted writer to be like, look, you don't need to know my race or my gender. All you need to know is the talent that I bring to the table, right? Now it's incentivized to make it known because it will get you more work. And look, in this economy, are you kidding me? Like, I always point this out. I say, when these actors take these jobs or these writers take these jobs, am I supposed to be mad at them for taking a job that they're being given for something that they might not have earned? No.
Well, that's exactly the point that he made.
But he points out that most of it is incentivized because it's done through equity programs that then hire them on for one season, and then when the money for that runs out, that person is not renewed.
Well, that's because the Guild
the Guild
uses their pot of money to pay these diversity hires. And he said the exact same that you did. Can you blame them? It's easy to get here, especially when talent takes a back seat to fitting a quota. Why worry? The showrunner and their number one will pick up the slack. They can't complain about that episode you turned in late or didn't turn in at all, and they'll be called racist or a bigot and get a call from HR. It's just easier to shut up and run cover for these kids who aren't ready for the big time.
And then he talks about how like most of them are wondering why they aren't getting showrunner positions after like 2 years, when in Hollywood it used to take 20 years before a show was entrusted to you.
And we see this same trend whenever Gen Z talks about joining the workforce. They're like, my degree in marketing is the experience, so I should be making an executive salary when I'm 2 years graduated from college.
Correct.
It's no surprise that Gen Zers or young millennials who have joined the TV and film writing business think the same way.
I don't even know if I'd put millennials in this category. I think this is a Gen Z thing and onward.
Depends. I mean, if they're in their 20s.
Yeah.
So that does cover some of them. And after this open letter was published, Chris Gore published a new article addressing it, and his response includes several messages from other guild members or other professionals from the music industry, from the publishing industry, and all of them chose to stay anonymous for fear of career-ending backlash or getting blacklisted. So here's what that said. There is a bias toward the 2-fer or 3-fer hire. Being gay, for example, isn't enough now. You have to be gay, African American, Latinx, undocumented, unhoused, differently abled. On the DEI scorecard, they have a 2 times or 3 times positive score for the hire.
Remember Friday when we talked about the Disney wheel of wokeness?
It's that.
With the privilege wheel.
You need to have multiple layers of oppression in order to qualify for one of these quota jobs. And I saw Siaka shared a tweet over the weekend that says, "Okay, black men, listen up. In order for you to renew your oppression card for 2024, you're going to have to find another dude and clap his cheeks. Or allow him to clap your cheeks. At the very least, give him an HJ. Next year, you're going to have to be trans. No exceptions. Start saying goodbye to your penis right now and size yourself up for a pair of boobs. I don't make the rules."
The biggest lie out of all of this is that any of it attributes to making you a better storyteller. It does not.
Well, the argument that they come up with is this, you have this specific experience as a Native American amputee who is bisexual.
Doesn't make you a better
and that means
storyteller.
that you can write a story about someone who has the same experience as you.
They make a point when we were watching Argyle that the character of Ellie Conway does the job she does so well because she does endless research and natural ability, or learned ability if you actually went to school for it, right, will lead you the way far more than just happening to have the same characteristics as a character you're writing. No wonder we're in a world full of endless self-inserts now.
Right.
And I do want to reiterate, like I said, I actually have a hard time putting it into words just why it was that television and movies was so much better back then. I think part of it is these were liberal people who cared about race and gender and sexuality and oppression, but understood that it couldn't be the top layer of the story, because it didn't concern their life every day. Mm-hmm. But the problem is now, because of our phones and because of the 24-hour endless news cycle, it is the top of the thought list for everyone who is a new writer. So instead of it being something that, I go to work and I write, and then in my free time I read the news, or I read the New Yorker, and it's got all these great articles, maybe I'll incorporate that into a story somewhere, right? Now it's the first thing they write about, and then the story comes second. Mm-hmm. And there is just an unbelievable loss that's been had. And I'm not talking about blockbuster movies from 30 years ago or 20 years ago. I'm talking about television from 2010. I'm not talking about that long ago, 15 years ago. There's that viral tweet that went, that viral tweet from a couple of months ago that's just re-picked up steam. It says, "Can you name me a father on television who's in good shape, has a loving wife, kids respect him, and has a good job, blah, blah, blah. Can you name a TV show in the last 15 years that have that?" And the joke was everyone was saying Ozark or Breaking Bad. Yeah. Because he's a criminal in both, there are criminals in both of them. But I'm just saying, we lost something that we didn't know. The golden age of television, as the head writer from HBO was talking about, we have lost the golden age of television, and it didn't need to be lost. It didn't get lost because we suddenly had a rash of deaths in which all of these great writers died. No, they're still there. Mm-hmm. They're all still there. And that's why they point out that, look, the cream rises to the top, right? The best writers will continue to get work. The dudes who did Breaking Bad will consider to make stuff. Those guys came from things like the X-Files, which was big in the 90s. All of these great writers will continue to exist, and they will still continue to win awards.
Yeah.
But we're going to have endless filler. And then you have all of these people who are looking for work and need jobs, and you think about what you could have. 80 streaming services, every single one of them theoretically could have good writers on it if they didn't freeze people out.
Well, those white guys who are in the top 2% of the TV and film business, they're going to get grandfathered in as the DEI regime takes over, but there's not going to be any new writers who are white, male, straight, cis.
We've got Taylor Sheridan
getting accepted.
And Taylor Sheridan would be an example of somebody who is a left-leaning dude who knows how to write stories that appeal to everyone.
True. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not going to say that. But well, no, I will say it. Okay. Reading Chris Gore's response to this when we have all this evidence, it irritated me because he's playing both sides. He said, I'm in favor of diversity in general, especially for stories where it makes sense. There was a notable show about the deaf community that amazingly didn't have a single deaf writer on the writing staff. Instead, they relied on consultants. That likely reduced the authenticity, and they lost out on many unique deaf stories.
Wouldn't it have been the job of the consultants to do that?
Right, yeah. We want original, authentic, and diverse stories, but they can't just check boxes. Who is we? Because I never said, original, authentic, that sounds nice. Diverse doesn't matter to me at all. So I'm not going to be included in the we want this or that. Like, that doesn't reflect me. And I think that a lot of these industries, like the publishing industry or fashion or anything in these creative arts, all of them were made up of liberals. But in the mid 2010s, everything started going way hard left, and you either rolled with the punches and got radicalized in that direction, or you were left behind. Yeah. The liberals who were just carefree and casual about it, but still bought into the ideology, they got left behind, and now they're considered right-leaning. Yep. But yeah, I disagree. Like, I don't think that they needed to have a deaf writer on their staff in order to write a story about someone who's deaf. That's ridiculous.
The idea of hiring a consultant is perfect for that.
Right, exactly. Or, you don't need a lawyer on your writing staff in order to write She-Hulk.
I mean, the thing is most, actually, okay. So
you need consultants, right?
So they actually point that out. So they point out that when She-Hulk was made, they went to try writing lawyer scenes and none of them could do it. So they stopped, okay? And for to be fair, the guy who wrote Suits, the showrunner for Suits, Aaron Korsh, I don't remember his name is Aaron's. Last name's Korsh, lawyer. Right? So he has plenty of knowledge about how that's working. I do think that it matters, but the idea is like, do you need, how important is that plot? Are we talking about like one character? Or are we talking about an entire theme for a show? I don't think it's unreasonable to have at least one person who has done that, who has credibility within the industry. How many of those are there?
Okay. Do you need a doctor on your writing staff? Salaried writer.
They use consultants
in order to write an episode of House.
They use consultants.
No, the argument on its face, I reject.
Cop shows do the same thing. They have law enforcement. They have consultants, usually ex-FBI or ex-LAPD, who are there to inform them about procedure. What would it look like? Okay, they're doing an entry into a room. What would it look like while they're doing this? For gosh sakes, it took them 20 years to figure out how to show them how to hold guns in Hollywood. I'm not even kidding you.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.